I'm Mike Fouché. I'm from a group of sites. We call ourselves Brown Line Media now, and also the Chicago Independent Ad Network, which we launched earlier this week. Before I talk about the ad network, I want to just remark that working in a major market, I feel, is very different than what a lot of other people describe. Let me tell you about some of who my competitors are. Everyblock.com is based in our neighborhood. 4 of the 6 founders live in our neighborhood for Center Square. We have, at different times, the governor of Illinois, the attorney general, the mayor, the comptroller of Illinois, all different kinds of important people, TV anchors, major daily editors, all live in the Center Square area, so the amount of attention that's paid by the dailies to our neighborhood is obscene. We also compete against Red Eye, Chicago Reader, Time Out Chicago. They love to cover stuff that goes on in our neighborhoods. We also compete against those stupid coupon books that are mailed to everybody by zip code. When I've talked to advertisers, they tell me, oh, no, I'm using that. That works great for me, whatever. There's the neighborhood community newspaper that we compete against. Yeah, okay, fine. Then there's also penny savers that get dropped at everybody's door. And then my latest favorite that I've run into that just blows my mind are the ads on the back of Catholic parish bulletins. There's a company that sells those for $14 a parish, and so per week. So you can call up this company and get into every parish on the north side for a week. So now I know how all the funeral homes advertise. So anyway, in that environment, there's 2 ways that you can be thinking about it. Either, oh no, I have no chance, or, well, somebody's got to be screwing up. And so, mostly what I've learned, and this is not how I started, this is what I've learned, is that you have to go and you have to tell a story about why somebody else's advertising channel stinks and why yours is better. Maybe more about why yours is better, but that's really what it's all about. I'm constantly trying to convince advertisers that our system is something that's more beneficial to them. And it's a challenge because in a lot of ways digital is something that a lot of people haven't tried. I get a lot of, well, I've never really tried the internet before. And I'm like, well, this is a good time. Right here I am. So that's a very common discussion. In terms of the ad network really got started through a whole series of conversations that Chicago Community Trust started. They have been very active in trying to support independent news in Chicago, and I really can't say who said it first. Maybe it was Rich Gordon said, hey, how about an ad network? And so then Chicago Community Trust forced a group of people in a room together to talk about it, and there were a lot of conversations. And so then finally they said, okay, we'll put up the money for it. And I said, okay, I'll run it. And so then there we go. So here we are, we started. So the thinking about the ad network is, for example, and our sales director, Kathy Chapman, is here somewhere. She can attest to this. Last spring, we had this brilliant idea. Let's call all the theater companies that are in our coverage area, because there are maybe 24 theater companies that have offices, if not their theaters, in our coverage area. And let's get them to advertise. They would love us. And so we started calling them. And the ones that took our calls said, oh, why don't you talk to our agency? And so we would call the agency, and the agency would say, nothing. They wouldn't even return our phone calls. And the reason is that the agencies, their focus is on figuring out how to spend $50,000, $100,000 at a time. And for us, we were talking about a buy of like 3,000. And that's a waste of their time from their perspective. And even though we are covering the area that has a lot of theater goers, we're probably one of the more arts-oriented areas in Chicago, they're just not interested, because we're too time consuming for them to do their job. It's easier for them just to place an ad in the Trib or Chicago Reader or Time Out Chicago. So, we're betting that having something like the ad network where they can make a much larger buy in one go. I mean, 1 month is around $12,000 for the whole ad network. That's a better sale for them, and it's a better purchase. And there's a lot of different advertisers that are like that. And I don't think that it necessarily means just because you're bigger that you're giving up, and there's a lot of talk about this among people, that you're giving up the idea of independent and local. I mean, there's a lot of different forms of independent and local. Your grocery store, your car dealer. I think a lot of people here in the old newspaper business can remember the days when advertising was car dealers, department stores, and grocery stores. And we want that. So that's where we're going with the ad network.
I'm getting my ventriloquist over here, my husband Rusty, who's really the advertising expert at our house, just sent me the text off of your comment, Mike, that advertising isn't bought or sold, it's stolen.
Right.
And that's the mindset that you really have to have. That's the mindset that everybody who is making money at advertising has, is that I'm not going to get, I'm stealing share from somebody else, and positioning yourself as a better option, and understanding your competition's weaknesses is a vital piece of your business.
All the time.
I would like to add that means understanding your own weaknesses, and that's where something like an ad network is really important, right? So out of every meeting, you should be getting something. So if somebody says no, you want to know why, and you want to know who's beating you, and you know what, why are they beating you? Those are really important questions to ask. And it's when you ask those questions that you want to partner up with people and form something like an ad network. In Sacramento, we didn't form Sloan, the Sacramento Local Online Advertising Network, because it was just a whim. It wasn't one of the experiments that we had under our brains. It was something that another independent publisher brought to us and said, I think if we teamed up, we could do something. And then we looked at our own sales experience, and I asked our salespeople, and I said, could we even sell a whole lot more inventory? And they said, well, we have all these agencies and advertisers who would buy, but the prices aren't high enough, and we don't have enough reach to give them the value that they need. I was like, okay, there is some kind of opportunity here. So we started Sloan, maybe almost 2 years ago, and that's been a moderate success for us, but I think it's been a big success for the community publishers in Sacramento. So.
Going back, building off the ad network piece, and also off of some of the things that Ben said about when he's referring to his advertisers as partners, talk about who you see as your partners. And Howard, I've heard you talk before about how important it is for you to represent to your advertisers the fact that you are a small business too. You're like them. You're dealing with the same small business issues that they're dealing with. You're a businessman. How do you, that is something that's been effective for you, and that's part of how that relationship works?
Well, one of the things I talk about a lot when talking about what we've done with advertising sales is, my approach to advertising sales in our community is it's relationship selling. I've many times told the story of the guy who I visited 8 times before he agreed to advertise. I just never did like a hard sell. Most sales trainers would tell you, you need to get a yes or no on that first visit. If they're at some point, you just have to put the pressure on them to either give you a yes or no. And that's not an approach I wanted to take, because I figure, I'm going to be living and working with this guy in this community maybe for the rest of my life. I want to have a good relationship with him. I don't want him to see me as like a hard pitch guy. I'm really here to help his business. And so early on, one of the experiences I had is I was sitting and talking to an advertiser, and he's kind of fidgeting and not really paying attention to what I was saying. And I felt like that we were really going anywhere with this conversation. And I said, by the way, do you know how the Batavian started? And he goes, no. And I started to tell him, and when I got to the point, my wife and I sold our house in Pittsburgh, we moved out here, and this is our sole source of income, suddenly he became engaged. And I realized that's really where like the insight came, is my customers need to see me as I'm a small businessman struggling to make it just like they are. I'm committed to the community just like they are. And once they could see me that way, then they become much more amenable to supporting what I'm doing and seeing, and they also can see more clearly that I'm there to help them as much as I am to just make money.
You know, I enjoy Mary sitting in the back of the room. She's going to be talking about engagement, but one of the things that we've talked about on the, on connecting with your users, your readers, your community, is the idea that you offer up some part of of who you are, that it's not just, I'm the journalist here to interview you. It's, I live here, I have a stake in the community, my kids go to the same schools your kids go to. So you're saying that that's a piece of the business relationship too. It's that authenticity of, I'm dealing with some of the same issues you are, and I'm not just here to pick your pocket.
Right.
It's more being seen as part of the community.
One thing we do, I always, when I do a post like this, I can just imagine all the old liners at our competition at the newspaper kind of cringing and laughing at me and being critical, like I did a post earlier this week about how we're moving and I'm going to Chicago. Sharing very personal stuff, part of my life, but it impacts coverage. I think readers have a right to know. The other aspect is it does help. I mean, I think one reason people connect to what Billy and I do is we're real people. We're, it's so much newspaper. So in the newspaper, there's always like this barrier. We have to have this objective barrier between us and the community, and to cover it objectively. And I'm like, no, we're part of the community. We really try to sell that idea.
I want to key in on what you said, Howard, about just being available and connecting with people all the time. I think that is very real. The best sales that I've made have usually been because I've just been around. I also, I was never in the business of selling print, but I would argue that maybe the statement about you have to get a yes or no answer on the first visit is emblematic of a stable industry. Everybody knows what print is. It's been around for 100 some odd, 200 years. So a salesman shows up selling a display ad for a newspaper. It's a very known quantity. All of us here that are selling digital, we're selling something that's really still not a known quantity. And, there is this universe of places like General Motors that they know what digital does for them. But most of the people that we're selling to have no idea. And they're still really trying to work it out. So I think that all of these meetings and conversations that you have with people are about convincing people. And a lot of it has to do with just gaining traction and figuring out who the people are in your community that are the biggest networkers. Those are the people I want, because then they'll talk to other people and then I'll get advertising.
Ben, I want to go back to something you were saying a minute ago about how important it is to understand your own business, and not just, that understanding the competitive landscape is not just about understanding your competitors, although that's something we probably don't do enough of, is really evaluating what the strengths and weaknesses of our competitors, but being able to understand yourself and your own business. I think most of the people in this room come from a journalism background, and if you went to interview a source for a story, you wouldn't kind of take a 1 or 2 word answer, you dig deeper. Is that part of your approach, is digging deeper into not just, okay, I don't want to advertise with you, or I don't want to, be part of your business, but the whys, and trying to feed that back into your thinking?
Ad salespeople know that if I ask them why somebody isn't advertising with us, whether they have been an advertiser or just an advertiser I wanted to be with us, that I'm going to want a detailed answer about why they're not advertising with us. Like, it offends me when certain advertisers don't advertise with us. Like, what are they thinking? And so I want someone to explain that to me, and that usually has to be that salesperson who had to go ask that person. So